No DIYs or repairs in the video today. Instead, I want to show you this really great socket set that's super popular for a reason. I want to show you how not only can you get a really low profile setup with this socket set as a stubby on your regular 3/8 drive ratchet, but how also if you spend about 10 minutes making this little device here with the screw, a washer, and one of the plastic deals from the rail, how you can also take any one of these sockets and put them right into your favorite 17mm wrench and get yourself into a super duper low profile situation. I'll also show you how you can make a more durable version of that instead of plastic if you want to take apart an old ratchet to do so, and why this tool is a really great addition to this socket set so that you can get your torque wrench or even your belt tool into a lot of places where you can't get these other combinations. What's so cool in my opinion about this socket set is that it is 6-point, always prefer 6-point. It is impact if you want to use it on a 3/8 inch drive impact. It's got the special features there to prevent rounding of fasteners. It has a 3/8 inch drive for regular ratchet, square drive, and then of course it's got the 17mm hex shank drive around here. You can get this from Home Depot. That's where I got these here. This is the Husky brand, but this is also sold probably most popularly from Astro Pneumatic as the Nano Sockets. You can also see it from Sunex and from Carlyle. You'll get a different quality rail depending on who you buy it from. Astro and Sunex probably have the nicest rail. They have an aluminum rail. This Husky one just comes with a plastic rail. As far as I know, no matter what the stamp is, they're all made by Tien-I, if that's how you say it, a tool maker out of Taiwan. The relief cut here was apparently petitioned in by Astro Pneumatic, and I'll get back to that in a little later in the video, but that's because they sell a proprietary wrench which has a 17 on one side and a 22mm on the other side ratcheting, that has a ring in the ratcheting mechanism that will hold on to the socket so you don't have to use a piece of paper or a little tool like this to hold it in. The reason it has a 22mm on one side is because all these makes also offer a little taller version of these in 1/2 inch drive, and those have 22mm hex shank. Now if this looks familiar and you already have this in your toolbox, this is the Pittsburgh pass-through ratchet set. It comes with a bunch of sockets, SAE and metric for 25 bucks. Well, you've got a low profile setup here, it's true, but you actually, whether you realize it or not, have a 19mm hex shank drive, and it even has this ball detent on here. So you can take any one of these sockets, which are on the metric a no skip from 10 to 19. You can take any one of these sockets and likewise put one of these in your favorite wrench, any wrench you got. For example, this 72 tooth Tekton extra long that I really like, and you can get into some low profile situations with this Harbor Freight set. But if we compare that even to any of these, they're all the same height. They're all 22.5mm, if I didn't mention that already. You can see you can get into way tighter spots with these, and you have a 17mm drive on here, so you can use those with your favorite 17mm wrenches. It just so happens that my favorite 17mm wrench is right on the opposite end of this Tekton with the 19mm on the other side. So I can take any of these sockets, stick this in here, and if you like, you can just cut the tip off a glove, slip it around there. You can put a piece of paper in, just anything just to keep it snug. Or, as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, you can spend about 10 minutes making this little device here. Stick it in the back, and then you've got a real easy to do thing that you can pull in and pop in and out. You can just as easily put this on, let's say, a 17mm. I've got this Husky 17mm here, and let's say I'm in a space where I can fit a wrench in but not a whole lot more. I'm apprehensive to use a 12-point. Let's say it's a tight fastener. I don't want to use the open end because I don't want to round it out. I want to get a good grip. Well, because this is 6-point, I can slip this in here and get just as many positions by just turning it on the 12 points. I get just as many positions as a 12-point has, but with a better grip, lower risk of rounding out a fastener. And then again, if you have a little deal like this, you can stick it in the back and hold it in place. So if you're interested to make a little deal like this, it's super duper easy. I will just take it apart for you real quick, and this is not my idea. I saw this on the Garage Journal forum, but I'll just take apart my little 10-minute prototype that I made with what was hanging around the garage. You see I just got a fastener there, got a washer, got a shim, got an O-ring, and then this little square drive is one of these plastic square drives like this, just like the ones from the rail. You could even take one from the rail if you wanted to. I actually used one of my extra ones from this Harbor Freight kit where you get the 1/4, 3/8, and 1/2 inch. This is a great kit. I like this because they're all the same size on the bottom. So all 3 drive sizes, they fit on the same rail, so you can make a mixed rail. You just get one of these little guys, put it in a vise. It's plastic, so I just cut it with a hacksaw. Try to keep as much material as you can up there, but make it square, and then you'll have something look like this. I put the hole, I drilled that hole a bit offset because I didn't want to interfere with the ball, and so just keep that in mind with whatever fastener you're going to use. Then once you have that done, the only reason I have this shim on here is because the fastener that I picked, I wanted to make it the most low profile with what I just had on hand in the garage. That fastener is too small for that hole, so that's the only reason I put this shim on here. Get a smaller diameter, inside diameter hole or a larger head fastener, and you won't have to worry about that. And then this just goes back on here. The first time I put it together, the screw interfered with the ball, so I wasn't able to get the socket on. So then I just took the screw off and cut the screw, made it a little shorter, and put it back together, and it's just like this. I forgot to mention that this O-ring was on here to take up a little bit of the slack, but and now that I put it back together, I just wanted to be able to show you how I put it together so I could take it apart in front of the camera. When I put it back together, you can see I put some adhesive around here, so I also filed this down, get it a little shorter so I don't need this anymore, and this fits really well now. I'll show you what I mean here. Go back on the Tekton. Even when it's not lined up with the hole, you can see that fits real nicely. So I'm happy with that. I'll show you the other, made another version of that, a little one, same deal, just a smaller washer, and I made that in case I need it for a setup like this, right? So this fits on here. This fits real nicely. In fact, oh, look at that. There's no play at all on that, so I'm happy about that. And then, like, let's say you needed to go in with an obstruction wrench somewhere, but you wanted to use a 6-point, you could fit that in there. This will fit in there too. This is a pretty thin wrench, so there's a little bit of play on there, but it still works quite well. So either of these will work really well. I forgot to mention that I glued a magnet on the tip here. That's just one of those Harbor Freight rare earth magnets. I just glued that on the tip there so that I can hold the fastener if I need to. If you would like to make a more durable version of this, I made this one. This one requires welding, but it's also still really easy to make. So I'll show you how I did that. I just used an old ratchet. This is the one from the $5 ratchet and socket set from Harbor Freight that everybody buys for grinders. You don't need grinders if you have this set because it's so low profile. But what I did was, so this pulls out like that, and you get everything kind of falls apart. And let's pretend this is together, that the drive is still connected here. Since this doesn't have the full section all the way across, I just slipped a washer on this side, and just pick a washer that has the right diameter that you're looking for on the outside. I ended up having to grind it down a little bit too, but then I came back and I just filled in here around each face while it was still together, just to have a bigger piece to work with. I came back in with the disc and cleaned this up. And then where I ran into a little problem is my weld came up a little too high and almost interfered with the ball. I was being careful not to weld the ball closed, but it came up a little too high and I couldn't get the socket on. It would be like that. So I had to come back in here with a hand file and file down this face. And then once I got it to fit like that, I was like, okay, that'll work. I tested it in a wrench, and then I came back with a cutting disc and cut this. So I had it like this, and then just used the flap disc to remove some material, and then cleaned it up with a wheel. So that's another thing you can do. Also, if you do this with this Harbor Freight wrench, I noticed that the retaining clip here, if we grab it, like for example when you saw a second ago, how there was a little bit of slack on here using either one of those. We can just take this, slip this on here, and this picks up a ton of slack. Not a whole lot of slack there. And this is that thin obstruction wrench. I'll show you how this works on this Tekton. I don't need the retaining ring. It just fits really well. So I'll show you how well it fits with the ball, because that's when it's the tightest. But you can obviously use it without. It's really nice. So that's something else you can do if you'd like. But honestly, I think these plastic ones will work just fine. You're not transmitting a load to this drive. This is just to hold the socket in place. The load is being transmitted from the wrench to the hex drive on this, and then to the socket up here at the 6-point side. So the plastic ones I think would work just fine. Another profile that I do want to mention though is, let's say you're in a situation where you want to use a breaker bar. I've got one of these sockets on a 3/8 inch drive breaker bar, and you can see that's pretty tall. If we compare that to a setup like this, where I'm on a wrench, I can get into places that this won't fit. And then of course, if you have a wrench extenders are sometimes a lot thinner than breaker bars as far as access. So I have a setup like this with my little homemade wrench extender there, where I can get into a place where I might not be able to get a breaker bar. You can see, because of that big difference in the size of the head there, and even with the size of the handle. So that's pretty cool. So I want to show you this in action and give you a real world example where this profile will get on a bolt that this profile will not, even though this is a fairly slim profile. This is the Harbor Freight, probably the thinnest 3/8 drive ratchet that you can get at Harbor Freight. This is the one that's got the 3/8 on one side and the 1/4 inch on the other. Both of these are very low profile, and this is a standard shallow socket, but it's not going to be shallow enough for this circumstance. You'll see here in a second that this will get in here and this will not. There's our test fastener. That's a power steering pump pivot bolt on a 1st generation RAV4, and if you need to remove either of your belts, or if you're doing your timing belt or any work on the pump, you have to at least loosen that. And as you can see, there's a lot of stuff in the way. Toyota recommends an SST, a special service tool, to reach this, because they recognize that this is a tight spot for your typical ratchet and socket set. And so we'll go in here with this low profile Pittsburgh, and just when you think you might be able to get on there, it's just not gonna happen. And you're so close to this pulley. This is a problem. So even right there, you think you might be able to work it on there, but if you even tried, you'd get stuck, because you'd end up back into that pulley. So what people do is they go in with a 12-point closed end wrench, and they end up rounding off that fastener, which is pretty common. But if you have this socket set, it's like having a whole collection of SSTs, because you got the 6-point on there, so you're not going to strip it or round it out, and we just sneak right on there. Look at that. I mean, I got a ton of room. With this big old long Tekton, I got a ton of leverage as well, so I could easily break this free. So this is just a real world example of how this socket set will get you into places that you'd be having to resort to some other options that are less favorable, let's just say. And even if you don't have a 17mm, I just took that Nano socket and slipped it onto this Harbor Freight low profile 3/8 that won't fit with the other socket, but I bet I can get it to fit with this one. Let's see. Yep, there we go. Alright, so I'm on there now. So just that difference in height, it's just huge. This is a great socket set, highly recommended. The other thing I wanted to show you is this that you saw at the beginning of the video. Now you figured out why I got the 17mm. This is a torque wrench adapter, if you're familiar with these. And once I realized how versatile this socket set was going to be, I went to NAPA and I picked up this tool I should say. It's Carlyle, there's the number right there. And this was like 14 or 15 bucks after the 20% off coupon. And I got this because now I can use this with these sockets to get into places with a torque wrench or even a belt tool that I wouldn't normally be able to get into. So I'll show you what I mean. I have two torque wrenches here. This is the standard Pittsburgh, the cheap one at Harbor Freight, and as you can see, it's a 3/8 inch drive. It's got a fairly thick head, and that's usually how torque wrenches are. This is the Icon 3/8, very nice torque wrench, very much like this one. It's got an even thicker head, and the reverse lever sticks out a bit more. So sometimes when you're trying to get on a fastener with the torque wrench and you can't get on it, you might try using a crow's foot or one of these flare style ones, and a lot of times this might not even work for you. So this here is just another way to possibly get on a fastener that you wouldn't be able to get on too. And as far as making adjustments for your torque setting, if you come in at a 90-degree angle like this, your lever arm is the same. So meaning this distance here to the center of the handle. So you don't have to make any adjustments to your value. You would just put in whatever your torque spec is, you put it in right here, just as if you didn't have the adapter on at all. If you're using it as an extension, all you have to do is use this equation. I'll put up an equation, or use an online calculator. Make a measurement from the center of the drive here to the center of your handle. And then if you're using these Carlyles, I believe they're all 2 inches center to center, and you use those values to calculate out a slightly lower value that you will input here on your torque wrench, because remember that your torque wrench is measuring torque at this point, but you're going to have 2-inch extension onto there. So like, let's say your torque spec for the fastener is you know, something like 40 foot-pounds. Well, you're not going to put 40 foot-pounds in here, because that would measure 40 foot-pounds here, and 2 inches out it would be a higher applied torque. So the value here will be something lower. I don't know what it would be. You'd have to calculate it out for your particular torque wrench. So it's just a really versatile setup to get you into spots where you normally wouldn't be able to with the torque wrench. But not only with the torque wrench, that's a square drive there. So obviously you could stick it on any ratchet, but where I'm interested is a belt tool. Stick this on any run-of-the-mill belt tool, right? $10 belt tool. And now you're into situations you have super duper high leverage. This basically could work as a wrench extender, really. I mean, you can't get too crazy, because you might, this is a 3/8 inch drive, so you could shear this off. More for access than for let's say, than for torque application, because this is still, like I say, that's still going to be a 3/8. Can't put too much torque on that. But look, if I can't get into some place because the pulley's on this side, and then I go to another application, pulley's on the other side, like, it's just great. Maybe I need to come in at some crazy 90-degree angle to get on a fastener. Like, you know, when you're working in the front of an engine, and you got a fan and pulleys in the way, and everybody wants to take up the same space, something like this could really come correct. And it's even cool if you have an extra one of these little deals, at least on the Husky rail. You can slide that on there, and now you have a place to put your little torque wrench extender, and that's pretty cool. Had to move the camera up quite a bit to fit this wrench. It's just barely in frame, but I did want to show, this is a version of the cable, however you say it, out of Taiwan. The kind of famous, popular double box end, spline drive, switch reversible, flex head, ratcheting wrench set, made for a bunch of different brands. I'll put up what I know as far as the different tooth count and the different part numbers. The Icon here is a 90 tooth version of it. These are an expensive wrench set. I got my set used for about $100, so I kind of got a really good deal. A lot of people are interested in this set but don't want to spend that kind of money on it, so they might be curious, hey, maybe I can just spend this $30 on the sockets, and how do they match up? So I'll show you. This is a 14mm. Now remember, these are all the same size here. This is the 14mm from the Nano set. I'm going to compare it to the 14mm side here of the cabo, and you can see that the cabo is quite a bit smaller, so it's going to be able to get into places where this won't be able to get into. But as the wrench size goes up, it comes closer to this, and here's what I mean. Obviously you'll get a 1719 in the cabo kit if you buy that set. And so if we grab this 17, we can see the 17 is quite a bit closer. So yes, the cabo is still shorter, but this is getting pretty competitive right here, right? Because they're pretty similar. And then if we take the 19, they are almost the same. It's a hair's difference. We can see just a hair's difference between the two, and indeed the cabo's a little bit shorter. But obviously if you do get this cabo set, it'll come with the 17, so you can also take any of these and stick it in here. And this may be another different profile that would work in a situation for you. None of my little tools there are long enough to hold that in place because of that offset, so I'd have to shim this, or if I find myself using this with these sockets a lot, I'll just make an extended version of that. But I did want to mention that so you have a comparison of how that looks. The last thing I'll mention is apparently Tekton is going to be discontinuing this wrench that you've seen throughout the video. This is the one with the 17mm side that works great with this, and with the 19mm side that works great with the Pittsburgh sockets. You can get these for 20% off right now at the Tekton site, which means that you can have this shipped for like 26 bucks or so. I don't get anything from Tekton. I just like this wrench. I will tell you, this can get a little floppy sometimes, and so sometimes you got to put a piece of tape around here if you want it to stay exactly. They are redesigning this apparently. I don't know if they're putting a reversible switch. I don't know if they're going to add more teeth or what they're going to do, but apparently this is on its way out and will soon be unobtainable. Probably going to be replaced with something better, but also something more expensive. So just thought I would mention that if you're interested in this wrench that you have seen throughout the video. So that is the story on my new Nanos here that I very much like. I should have got these years ago. What do you think? Have you had them for years and you like them? Or is this a new tool that you're just learning about and you think, hey, this would really help me out in certain circumstances? Leave a comment. Leave a comment if you know some specific applications on jobs where this kind of socket really saves the day, or even this specific socket saves the day. Or if you have these and you like them and you can recommend a ratcheting wrench to everybody that you prefer, let us know in the comment section. I know that I don't have it, but I know that the Gear Wrench 120 XP XL, the long 17mm flex head gear wrench with 120 tooth, well, it's 120 position dual pawl. That one people really like to use with these. But what are some other ratchets that you might use, or some funny combinations that you've been able to accomplish with these sockets? Please leave a comment. I'm interested to hear what you think. And in case you're interested to buy these sockets, if I didn't mention it earlier in the video, there is an expanded version. I settled with this because I like the price and the coverage from 6 to 19. But if you buy from, I believe, Astro or Sunex, you can call them all the way out to 24mm on the 3/8 inch drive. So you'd get a few more sockets there. When I was researching these too, if you work with external Torx, these look familiar to you. Astro makes a kit now with this same design, but with the external Torx, and that could be pretty cool. It's a mixed rail with some 1/4 inch. This is not it. This is just, I'm using as an example. It's got some low profile 1/4 inch drive equivalents with, I think it was an 11mm external hex, and then I believe the others, the 3/8, are like these with the 17mm external hex. So if you're working on European cars especially, and you're dealing in some spaces where you might need a super duper low profile external Torx, check that out. As far as I could see, the best price on that was at JB Tools. They also pretty much have the best price on all of these sockets, and also the best price on that proprietary double box end Astro wrench. So I hope this video was helpful for you, or maybe just a little bit of fun. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next repair.